And welcome back to the lunchroom. And we do hope that you're having a great one indeed, wherever you are. And I believe we are joining now somebody over in the Suffrage Jacques community. She is a hopeful for the St. Lucia Labour Party for that seat, and she is Miss Emma Hippolyte. Hello.
Hi, Curly.
How are you doing?
I'm blessed. I was really supposed to have been from Suffrage in there, but at the moment, I'm actually speaking to you from my house in Bois d'Orange because last night I got a call to get the job.
Ah, okay. Oh. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So
and tell us about that. How did that go?
Actually, when I woke up this morning, I said, Lord, I don't know what that thing is, but whatever it is, I'm with it. As long as you lead me, I will follow. So I went in there. Quite a few of our colleagues were there. It went smoothly. So we need to thank God for that. And I want to use that moment to encourage others to consider taking that vaccine so that we can protect each other. Because of all that community spread we have, I believe, in addition to the vaccine, there are other things we should do. But I believe that persons need to try to get that vaccine so that we can protect each other.
Wonderful. And this was part of a broader group of parliamentarians or politicians?
Well, actually, yes, I had the call from Ernest, so Philip, the St. Lucia Labour Party candidates, and parliamentarians were invited to take it. So I want to thank our political leader for remembering us in that situation.
All right, wonderful. Well, of course, I'm glad that that's occurring, and of course, the rollout overall. How is that going, by the way, in Suffrage? Has that begun yet for persons within the Suffrage area?
From what I gather, Suffrage is next week Friday. I'm told persons I've been told that Suffrage does not appear on the schedule. But when I had the last conversation with the nurse, I was told that it is next week Friday. So I want to encourage all of Suffrage. I'm not sure what is the quantity that they have, but persons should try to register. Although when I tried to register, I was
online.
Yes, I was getting the challenge in doing so because when I put my name, and my name is a very simple name, Emma. That's all I have. I'm not a complex person. I'm very simple. But then it says that we are not taking any numbers in that slot. So I don't know what it meant.
Oh, okay. Also, they replied, you got a reply.
No, right away, in next to the area saying no numbers there. But but there were no numbers, so I don't know why.
I don't know. That's very interesting indeed. But of course, how is Suffrage coping, though, before we get into anything else, in terms of COVID-19, following the protocols? What are you seeing in terms of, I'm not sure how much, going out and about you're doing, but from what you're seeing.
Actually, I had a conversation. I'm having conversations with the nurse because what I did was we had a situation where one of our colleagues tested positive. So I stayed in for more than 3 weeks. I really wanted to ensure that I was not affected. I stayed in and then I took the test. But what I'm gathering is that there is a huge community spread and persons in conversation with persons, there is a challenge in terms of trust because I think that mistrust came about with the delay in terms of the results. So I'm really hoping that we can change that. Because if, persons go for testing and it takes them 2-3 weeks to get the results, then what's the point?
So you thought that persons were what? They were just simply not following, they were not quarantining?
Well, I think they were quarantining if they know, I think so, but I think they were skeptical to go for the test.
Oh, okay. Because of the length of time that the testing was taking?
Yes.
I see. Okay. But there is supposed to be I think Suffrage is, in fact, there is a testing center there at the hospital.
Yes. You can go and get tested at the hospital.
I see. Wonderful. Now, of course, you put yourself up. You're making a significant change. You,
I
of
put
course,
myself
represented.
up.
You're representing Grosley. You represented Grosley for a 5-year term or 4.5-year term, and after a defeat there, you've decided to make a shift to Suffrage for Jacques. What is the thinking there? Why not going back up for Grosley? Why Suffrage for Jacques?
Well, I've always told colleagues, you know, it's only when you get into the politics and you run the politics that you understand the challenges in the politics. And I remember very clearly after we lost the last election, I told the political leader, Philip J. Pierre, that if I'm ever going to get into this thing again, I'm going to give it a shot for my people, where I was born. And that is what I did. I had to consider it very clearly for a long time before, you know, I was not sure what I was doing, whether I was going to go back into active politics. But for me, active politics is serving the people. So I have served the people of Grosley. I am from Suffrage, and now I said I'm ready to serve the people of Suffrage for Jacques.
Now, talking about Grosley a little bit before we move on to Suffrage, however, of course, you went up against Mr. Spider Montoute. You defeated him the first time, and then, well, his second time, your first time, and then, of course, there was a switch again.
Yeah.
Seems Grosley has been shifting quite a bit. What do you see, and what are you hearing about that in terms of moving forward? Because now there's a new candidate, of course.
Young Kenson is on the ground.
Mr. Kenson Kazimi.
He has a good chance. Because you see, Grosley, it's so diverse. And you need to know the thinking of the people at Cap Estate is different to the people at Rodney Bay, is different to the people at Beausejour, is different to the people at La Bonne. So things are changing. For example, the people at La Bonne are solid UWPs. Now, with Kenson, with the relatives there, that can change. Grand Riviere was solid labor. Then, you know, the last election, what happened where everybody was purchasing votes and people were not understanding their role in terms of the voting cycle. A lot of our young people accepted monies. Now, for example, when I, as a person who have worked with the young people, especially in the area of sport, they came back to say, Aunt Emma, we're missing you. I said, well, you didn't vote for me the last election. Yet they know that when I was the PAL rep, they never had a parliamentary rep that had supported the sporting programs as I did. But you see, they don't think ahead. They think of the day, they think of whatever money that was attractive to them. There were persons there who offered, afterwards they themselves came to say, persons offered to pay off their mortgages. And I'm raising that because it's going to happen again, where the United Workers' Party candidates, they go all around making a lot of promises to people. And they know very well that they are not going to meet these promises. But they have kept people hungry, and now they come dangling something in front of people, promising houses, promising galvanized leg, promising this there and that there. And the people vote them in, forgetting that this party, for the past 4.5 years, almost 5 years, have actually put them on their knees, have brought our country to its knees. When you assess what is happening around us, when you assess the type of debt, that hole that our Honorable Prime Minister has placed us in, he has technically buried us alive. He has. And then when you see what is happening with these funds, now we're on the home stretch for election. You're seeing all types of capital projects. But very little is trickling down to the average man and woman.
Now, many persons knew you, of course, as a director of the National Insurance Corporation. Some may even say that you're very instrumental in shaping the new projection of the National Insurance Corporation. And of course, quite recently, they've been in the news for different reasons. First, we of course heard about the Cabot issue and placing of, I think, a $27 million loan to this investor for the development of a golf course. And then later on, the decision by the NIC to, on its own, get involved in income support. Now, of course, earlier on, you had raised that concern that this, in fact, is going to be a hole in the NIC portfolio.
You mean the income support?
Yes, exactly. Because government has not really given any indication that they're going to be paying back the NIC for what the NIC did. It simply just has taken it upon itself. The implications there, are you concerned about that issue in terms of moving forward, looking at pensions, looking at support that is what people are going to be hoping for? How do you see that panning out?
Well, when you look at it, first, I need to say that without the difficult decisions that we made when we were in office, the St. Lucia Labour Party with Dr. Kenny Anthony as the Minister for Finance and the Minister for the National Insurance, when we took steps to try to correct the structure of the National Insurance to make it more sustainable, up to maybe 2 years ago, you would have the United Workers' Party persons and government would accuse Emma Hippolyte of increasing the pension age. But now that they are using the National Insurance as a cash cow, they are not thanking Emma Hippolyte and the Kenny Anthony administration for the proper management of the resources of the National Insurance. Yes, but I'm concerned that I'm glad that the National Insurance was able to come in to help some of the contributors. But I'm saying, I think they paid over $60 million out of the fund. I am saying that somewhere along the line, government ought to have agreed to bring that back, because that is going to have implications down the road to pay pension. We know that. The National Insurance technical staff are very much aware of that.
It may very well mean that the pensionable age has to increase again.
Well, I hope not. But, I mean, because you see, to increase the pension age, there is a lot of exercises that takes place. And persons should not think that any government should just sit down and say, okay, the retirement age is 60, we will move it to 65. It is not a government that's supposed to do that. It is the technical people. When that decision was taken, we had the services of international actuaries who came in, who looked at the situation in the fund, who looked at the number of years that persons are living in the country, looked at a lot of things, and made that proposal. And I always said, I always remember, and that's why I want to repeat it so that St. Lucians understand their role. When we first got the first report and to increase the pension age from 60 to 65 over a 15-year period, that means 1 year, we went out to the public and said, that's the recommendation that we have, and for consideration. One individual wrote back. Not two, not 10, not 1,000. One individual wrote back to say, I don't think I want to wait until 65 to get my pension. One individual. And I want I can say his name. It was Deacon Taylor. One individual, he wrote. And then I took this letter and went back to the actuary and say, look, this is what I have. We went out to the public, but knowing the public maybe not paying attention, one individual said they do not want to wait until age 60, 65. Mm-hmm. And the actuary came back and gave us a solution to that. Gave us what you call a modified pension. Up to today, anybody at age 60 can go to the National Insurance, as long as you have contributed for 15 years, can get a pension.
Now, of course, while you were at the NIC, one of the things that you were very, very instrumental in working towards was that of universal health care.
Yeah.
And I know the NIC was working very closely with the Ministry of Health, and I believe there was a committee, Dr. Stephen King, amongst others, working towards formulating the whole universal healthcare issue, because that, of course, has been long in coming for a number of St. Lucians. Here we are now in the midst of COVID-19. I think for the better part of the past 4 years, we've been promised national health insurance. Your take on what's going on there? Any movement? What are your thoughts as to, is it going to ever happen? Because St. Lucians have been hearing about this for such a long time.
Well, I am not certain that it can happen before this coming election. Because I believe, you see, sometimes persons speak and don't understand the type of work, the level of work that gets into some of these things. You know, we get up in the morning not knowing how many hours persons who are serving quietly have put in. And I must tell you that when we start at the National Insurance to work on universal health care, and I also want to say that we worked with about 100 St. Lucians, public sector, private sector. And they gave that time free. We call them into committee meetings, and the staff at the National Insurance will tell you that this National Insurance boardroom was the busiest in the country. But they gave that time. We had 8 different committees working together. And then when we had a challenge, we called on the international bodies to guide us. We did not go and take millions and pay huge consultants and then don't have anything. All the work was done by local persons. You're right. I used to call Dr. King at his home 5 o'clock in the morning as soon as I wake up. Whatever we had to do. He was the one leading us in terms of the medical area. I could remember very early members of the Dental and Medical Association. Some of them were reluctant. And it was because they were reluctant because they had gone through that process before. And they were frustrated. They didn't think it was going to happen. And then, slowly but surely, we won their confidence. And the members of the Dental and Medical Association worked with us. They worked.
Now, we're seeing calls, and I'm just trying to follow, in fact, what is going on from the perspective of the current administration. It appears that there are attempts to approach the private insurers to get involved and to get proposals for this national health insurance. I think there's some sort of a World Bank project, health systems strengthening project, and part of that is to try to get some support there. But is there not a possibility that a national health insurance could be provided through the NIC system?
Well, I don't want to say that it is through the NIC system. You say that whether we can provide a universal health care program with management assistance or administration from the National Insurance. And we did look at that. But even when we were working on universal health care, we engaged the private sector, not for them to be the overall charge of the system. We engaged them because we realized that they would have had to amend. They would have had to amend the coverage that was being offered to St. Lucians. We felt that with universal health care, because you see, health is a very costly exercise. Whether we like it or not, that's the first thing we need to realize. It is very costly. And consequently, you have to ensure that you be efficient and effective in utilizing your resources. We approached and had several meetings with the Insurance Council, and we asked them to revisit the package of coverage that they were going to offer St. Lucians. We wanted them to come at the higher end, not at the low end. For example, now you have insurance companies offering policies for example, days at Victoria Hospital at that time, or St. Jude's. We are saying, no, you have to revisit. That person who has that policy with you, you would have to upgrade that person to allow that person to have a coverage, for example, if the person has to get out of St. Lucia.
So in other words, the focus, because you had a universal health care system coming in place, which would be providing as a basic pool or basket of services.
Yes.
The idea is that the existing health insurance policies, they would be more concerned about topping up whatever is actually already existing and available for everybody.
That is what it was.
Right. Now,
that's the approach we had.
Now, Ms. Hippolyte, we are due for a break for our weather. We're going to be taking that break now. When we come back, we'll continue to take in that entire conversation. Hopefully, we can talk a little bit more about Suffrage as well.
Okay, fine.
And welcome back to the lunchroom, and we are speaking with SLP candidate and hopeful for the Suffrage Force-Jacques seat, Miss Emma Hippolyte. Of course, Miss Hippolyte, we know Suffrage has so many different titles. You know, it's been considered at one point the breadbasket of St. Lucia, the oldest town in St. Lucia. We know it as the cradle for most of our tourism attractions. Certainly a very attractive site, a very unique site indeed, a unique town and district indeed. Your thoughts as to how development is occurring right now in Suffrage? Are we on the right track, or is there a lot more to be done?
Thank you, Curly. You're correct in saying that Suffrage is a very important site for our tourism product. And it is for this reason that I'm so concerned as to our PAL rep as the minister responsible for the environment, for physical planning, actually gave permission for an individual to construct a villa in our no-build zone. If we understand the importance of...
You're speaking about on the Pitos?
That's right.
On the Pitos management area. Mm-hmm.
Yes. If you understand, you see, because people don't come to Suffrage because the visitor from overseas don't come to Suffrage because there is a bus shelter or a bus stop. They come because Suffrage is a World Heritage Site. They come because Suffrage has a piton, which is only one in the world. And when you go anywhere, that is how we are identified. Persons who go anywhere in the world, as soon as you see the piton, you know that this is St. Lucia. And I could not believe that the PAL rep, the person representing Suffrage, would sit and make a decision to deface this national landmark. And we continue asking him questions on that, and he continue to remain mute on this critical issue.
And some would even say he was also ably supported by another Suffrage boy himself, the head of the DCA.
That's right, Mr. Clem Bob. And somebody who knows better. You know, and these are challenges that we have. We must not let the politics take over our St. Lucia. We must not let that happen. Because this piton that is there, we found it there, and we need to do everything to protect it so that our children and children's children will find it as is, in its natural state, because that is what gives it the value. And right now there, Honorable Harris Stanislaus, by approving the construction on the pitons, has technically defaced our national landmark. Now, of late, I'm hearing the PMAC trying to say, restore our pride. But before we restore our pride, to restore our pride is to remove that building from where they put it. I mean, I'm glad that Afa, again from Suffrage, a good song and so on. But stop the gimmick. The reality is, you damage our pride, and you have not even accepted that you have done so. And then on the side, you have a committee to say Friends of the Pitons. It's good to have the Friends of the Pitons, but what are they saying about that act? What are they saying? Because we are told that there is also a request for a second villa on the Pitons.
And a much larger structure, in fact, from what I recall.
That is the point. And up to now, we are not hearing from the PAL rep, you are not hearing from the DCA chair, you are not hearing from the Honorable Prime Minister that error will not be repeated, and that steps will be taken to fix. And you definitely cannot fix. When you go and cut a 200-year-old tamarind tree, how can you put it back? How can you put it back? And that is the problem with the United Workers' Party. They put money before everything else. They put money before everything else. But we are an island with very few people, intelligent people, and we need to know the things that are important for us, that is going to make St. Lucia, the things that make St. Lucia what it is. And the Pitons, followed by the Sulphur Springs, they are all in Suffrage. So if the rep has not understood that, then who is he representing? He's not representing the youth. He's not representing the elderly.
What do you say to persons who, of course, have been saying that we've got these great titles of World Heritage Sites, but they're not feeling the benefits? The benefits are not accruing to the average everyday person. It's only still benefiting perhaps the persons who own the high-end luxury properties and villas, but the average person is not benefiting.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. And I'm saying yes and no because somewhere in my 10-point plan is to sit with the hotel owners to see how we can amend that tourism product so that you have the effect of tourism being felt more on the ground than we have at the moment. That is important. But we must not be blinded by the fact that the World Heritage Site status is a significant asset for us. It is a significant asset, and we must not throw it away. We must not throw it away.
But within the town itself, as in terms of the towns and the villages, can more be done there in terms of strengthening that tourism product?
Oh, there is no doubt about that, because when you go, you take different places. For example, you might know if you go to Pochejac, you go to Dewash. Mm-hmm. They are fantastic sites that we can mix the product that we have. But that's where the challenge is. The challenge is, at the moment, if those persons do not have the ability and the resources to do the type of marketing, there is no linkage between the hotels that are there and the sites. I have a site most persons would know. Bonnouvelle is on is a heritage trail, and it's a challenge to get the sites marketed on or in the hotels. It is because of the way the industry is structured. And there is room, there is need. There is need for us to sit around the table to understand, yes, the hotel owners have invested some monies, but there is room, simple things that we can do to transform the product itself so that you have more multiplier effect of the dollar, to not only to the taxi driver, but to the vendor, and to the person, the young person with skills, to the musician, to the persons with arts and theater. In Suffrage, we have a very mature group, Suffrage Action Theater, SAT. but they are not linked as such to the tourism product, and they've got a good product. But you can take all of these things and sit around the table and say, okay, for example, when you look, that the visitor comes in, Suffrage is relatively safe, but there is no a basic thing like a back roll, so that at a point in time, if the person is in Suffrage for 7 days, that one evening of that 7 days, there is a nice tour of the various bars in different, so that they understand a bit of our culture. They can spend a half morning in Fonchajak and understand what it is to plant a dasheen and to eat a dasheen. So definitely there is room to transform the tourism product. And I am really hoping that we can achieve that. But that is on my plan.
The copra industry has been a big one for quite some time, but of course a lot of association with Suffrage. The copra factory, I think, has been sitting down, abandoned for quite a long time. Any opportunities there at all?
Big opportunities. When you touch the copra factory, you actually touch my own family and myself. Because as a child, I know I had to climb the roof of my mother's kitchen to put the copra to dry. So, and my mom definitely was one of a very, in fact, at that time, I would say she was a middleman, because she used to buy the copra, process it, and then we sell. So we were part of doing the processing. Now, as a farmer myself, I'm also a member of the copra manufacturers, Coconut Growers Association. Yes, but that structure is there. There are significant things that we can do. I've heard that the existing government wanted to link it to the sports complex that is there. I don't know if we need all of that there. I believe what we should do with the copra thing is to use it as a lot of space. So develop it, put a section there for value added, so that our young women can take the same agricultural products that we have and add it to it. I could remember there was also, even when I was still a minister, there was the factory, the section downstairs where they did butter, margarine. So there were a lot of things that we can do there. I know now there's a gentleman doing a bit of soap. There's a gentleman purchasing copra. But that entire stretch can be our value-added manufacturing section for Suffrage. And that is on my plan.
Do you see that return of Suffrage being considered the breadbasket, so to speak? I mean, there's been so much interest in products such as cocoa and chocolate and niche industries such as coffee. Is that something that, in terms of the agro sector for Suffrage and beyond?
Well, there is potential, but the first thing is, as you see what has happened, this government have ignored the farmer completely. And we know that despite all COVID and whatever it is, we must eat. And consequently, if you had a government that was thinking right, immediately this COVID situation came around, they ought to have sat down and say, how are we going to work with our farmers so that our people will have food to eat? That is, from all indications, I don't think that question or that sitting down was done. Because when you go to Fonchajak and see the amount of food and dasheen that is being planted, even on my farm, I mean, this year for the first time I went into quite a bit of dasheen. You call Massey, because you call Massey and the gentleman, it's 3 weeks. You can sell it. So there is no purchasing power on the ground. Okay? So the farmer, there is food being produced, and the poor farmer cannot sell it. And consequently, don't even have the monies to pay other persons to work for them, and don't have the monies for inputs. And that is why earlier this year, I had to assist some of the Fonchajak and other farmers by distributing some 100, I think we did 30 first and then 100 bags of fertilizer, about 130 bags of fertilizer. And you still have the young farmers screaming at us saying, but you ignored us. So I'm saying you have persons who are willing even to do the basic short-term crops, but you have a challenge in terms of a market. So again, the Central Labour Party have made a statement as it relates to agriculture, but for Suffrage in particular, we want to look at how we're going to work with these farmers. Looking at what has happened to Bellevue Corp, for example, that is now sitting there. Nobody is saying what has happened to it, but it is there, not operating. How we use that and use the environment to provide storage space and chill rooms and so on, so that the farmers can go somewhere, market the produce, and then go back and do their cultivation, and somebody else deal with the marketing. It's very important that you do so. But in terms of niche plants like coffee, cocoa, St. Lucia, cocoa for us is a very premium product. There are challenges there as well, rodents and things like that. The government will have to sit with the farmers. The farmers need help. To deal with that, how we manage it, again, a lot of the farms you have now, we had coffee before and then we sort of ignored it. And now we're being told to plant coffee again. We are being told to plant coffee again. And there are other products that we believe we need to plant. You have the big issue of marijuana cultivation, how it is managed, plus the regulations. So there are very areas for potential growth. But we must not forget that a country ought to be able to feed itself. So when all was happening there in COVID, the United Workers' Party government should have come up, give not only farmers, give housewives some plans to put in their yard so that at least to get them occupied away from just thinking of what is COVID going to do to them, and have something. So at least, had the government done that, we would have had a transformed sector by now. Persons would have a proper kitchen garden. And the government should have had, if all the monies they receive from everywhere, that they are doing everything except to help the people eat. They should have taken some of these monies and purchased items from the farmers and provided to those persons who are not able to purchase food for themselves. So there was an area there that I think the government, our government, missed the ball. They missed it completely.
Mr. Hippolyte, we're almost out of time. In fact, we are. But just a very quick question. As we started with healthcare, yes. I know that I just wanted to end with healthcare as well. There was that promise, I think, of a new Suffrage polyclinic by 2020. I remember the current MP making that statement. What has become of that? Is that still a necessity? What's going on with that situation?
Well, as you asked about that, first I need to thank all the nurses, doctors, police officers, firemen who are providing all the services at the moment. We need to thank them and say how much we appreciate them. But again, this is a lot of promises. The Suffrage Hospital has gone through at least 2 fires. They've been assessed. The structural, I'm told the World Bank has done a structural analysis of the building. But that report is not out there for John public to know the status of the hospital. But the minister promised, the Parliament promised a new hospital. Now, we have to be very realistic. You have a government who could not open OKEU, who cannot finish St. Jude's. Is a new hospital they'll put in Suffrage? I am not telling you that Suffrage do not need better health care. Suffrage needs better health care. But Pareb is very much aware that they would not have been able to put that hospital at the front.
Well, I suppose there's also another one in Dennery, which was actually, it began construction, the Dennery Polyclinic, but that as well has come to naught for the time being. So I suppose, it will have to wait a little while longer with respect to Suffrage.
We have to wait a little longer. Look at the services that have been provided at the hospital. One of the things that I look at each time I get into that hospital, when I was a child, that hospital had accommodation for all types of things. Children's ward, men's ward, women's ward, and everything. Now, when you go in there, there is one unisex room with 3 beds. And that just blew my mind. You know, so you have a hospital, and that's important because look at Suffrage is a tourist town. You have all the people diving there, any disaster there, you know.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Hippolyte, any parting thoughts from you? Because we're pretty much out of time here at the lunchroom.
Oh, yeah, I think I just started talking.
That's what happens sometimes. Hopefully we'll hear from you sometime in the future soon.
I will want to come again. I want to thank all of Suffrage for the support that they have provided and to remind them that don't buy these promises. Open your eyes and see who is going to come and work with you for a better Suffrage. So Suffrage, Pont Saint-Jacques, all of Suffrage, let us vote the St. Lucia Labour Party, let us vote Emma Hippolyte, and let us transform our town into the town that we want. I thank you.
Ms. Emma Hippolyte, the SLP's candidate for Suffrage Forces Jacques, for that interview. And of course,